Alrighty, good morning, health champions. Hopefully, you guys are having a great start to your week. It's already Wednesday, so it's the middle of the week. Isn't that exciting? I know for me, I just came off working the past 2 days, so today is my first day being at home, getting to first catch up with you guys. So hopefully, that's a good thing. And then got some work I need to get done. So before I get to that, though, let's get started on our training for this week. And this week we're actually focusing on the benefits of volunteering. And a lot of people, there's certain things that come to mind as far as, what the benefits are. And we'll talk about those as well, but there's a lot of surprising benefits many people don't know about. And so those are the ones that I really wanted to highlight today and go over that. So before we get into that, I want to go a little bit on the numbers here. Uh, so the independent sector, which is an organization that gathers tons of different statistics about charitable activities and all of that, actually places an estimated national value for each volunteer hour every year. So essentially, this is giving a monetary value to instead of how much you're earning per hour, this is how much a person who volunteers per hour, with the value of that time essentially. And so as of 2019, which is the latest data that's available currently, the amount of monetary value that would be assigned to someone who's volunteering per hour would be 27.20 an hour. So when you think of when people are donating their time to do something, obviously at 27.20 an hour, time is valuable. But that's the big thing because people who volunteer, obviously, they're not doing it for the money. There's many reasons why they do it. Usually, the bottom line is they want to help people. Or if you're helping animals, if you're volunteer like at an animal shelter, that's obviously, is a good thing as well. And the big thing is we're trying to make a difference. And whatever it is, the cause that we believe in is we want to make a difference. So in volunteering, the benefits of it have been known for thousands of years. When we give something to someone else in the sense that we're giving our time to something, it's something we're usually passionate about. It's something that we want to see a difference in. So in recent years, though, there's been research being done on the benefits of volunteering for the person who is the volunteer. Um, so before we get into obviously the most common ones, I want to touch on the ones that are surprising, since that's obviously what we're focusing on today. The big ones are physical related, and that's where people who volunteer are just usually have a healthier body. And there's several reasons why this could be the case, but the research is showing that people who volunteer have lower mortality rates, greater functional, day-to-day activity ability, and lower rates of depression. And compared to obviously people who don't volunteer. So many people, when you're volunteering, it requires some level of physical exertion, and not maybe heavy exertion, but you're moving more than you would be if you're just sitting at home watching TV, reading a book. You're not out actually doing something. When we're volunteering, we're moving around doing different activities. And this usually is more than we'd be doing if we weren't volunteering. Um, so this is, and the other concept is people who volunteer just might have a better general sense of, overall health. They might be more focused on things that would improve their health. But even when you take that into consideration, people who would not necessarily consider their health, they but still volunteer, they still have these same similar physical outcomes. Um, so a research study done by the Carnegie Mellon University found that older adults, this is who the study was comprised of, who volunteered at least 200 hours each year, were 40% less likely to develop high blood pressure. And part of it is obviously the increase in physical activity. The other part of it is when we're volunteering and we're helping someone else or something else, that it helps reduce stress levels because we feel that we're doing something of importance. Um, and increase positive, relaxed feelings, which obviously all of that releases dopamine. And dopamine is that feel good chemical in our brain. And so when this happens, by reducing our stress levels, and we know that stress is incredibly bad for our health, that is, well, particularly chronic stress is, that when we're decreasing this over the long term by volunteering consistently, this is putting our body in better shape because it's not dealing with this chronic stress. Um, Another different study done by the London School of Economics found that the more people volunteered, the happier they were. Obviously, when we're reducing stress, that's huge. But when we're volunteering, we're also building empathy and strengthening our social bonds within ourselves and within our community with who we're interacting with because we feel, empathy and sympathy for the people or animals or whatever it is the cause we're doing, that helps us be better developed emotionally, is the best way to describe it. And when we do that, obviously that impacts our mental health, which impacts our physical health. And then the strengthening of social bonds is so important because especially now, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, so many of us have ended up so isolated. And we're seeing that in the huge increases in depression and other things as far as mental health, anxiety, and, isolation. And this is where volunteering, and I realize for some individuals, there's health concerns around being interacting with other people, but there's other ways to volunteer. And we'll get into some ideas for that here in a little bit later. But the strengthening of social bonds. Human beings are designed to be social creatures, if you will. And that's where, by having this connection, this helps with that whole idea of, getting not necessarily rid of depression, but keeping it further at bay, making you less likely to experience it, making you less likely to be anxious, all of these important things that we need is to be able to function. And so this is where it's so important for volunteering is that you get the physical benefits, obviously, due to the reduced stress, but you're also getting these mental health benefits that most of us wouldn't realize and we have a tendency to take for granted because it's not something we usually think about. But with the pandemic focusing this huge highlight on loneliness that's increasing dramatically, um, there was a campaign to end loneliness that says found that 45% of people in the United States and the United Kingdom um, say they feel lonely. And on top of that, 1 in 10 people say they have no close friends. And that is part of the reason why we're seeing all these numbers of depression is just skyrocket. It's because of the fact that we're not interacting in a way that we once had to. While social media is great because in some ways it allows us to be connected to people maybe we never would have even met, it's that social interaction, those close ties that when you, for instance, you're interacting, doing an activity that you're passionate about, that someone else is also passionate about, and in this case, we're talking about volunteering, is that you are connecting to them in a way that you wouldn't be able to, otherwise if you just happen to be walking down the street and saw the same person and said hello. It's not the same as spending time together and having a shared activity of interest where you have that connection. Or if your type of volunteering involves helping other people, like for instance, if you teach kids to read or teach adults financial help, if, going over that type of stuff, that right there is allowing you to connect to that person on another level. And that provides that sense of connectedness that we often are missing in our lives is as we spend more and more time on the internet and social media and all of that. And basically we spend time on our screens more than we do interacting with others. And that's, I mean, part of life, but it's just something that as it's increasing, we're starting to see exactly how it's impacting us. And this is why it's important to be able to do things to combat it in some ways. Um, Another big thing is that when it comes to volunteering, they're finding that people who do have a lower risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. And part of it is this connectedness helps improve elasticity in your brain. And your brain is capable of learning far into the aging process. The more you do, the more you essentially challenge your brain throughout your life and continue to challenge it increases its ability to continue learning, and it usually can help, slow down the deterioration that's just the natural part of aging. Obviously, certain things, especially with Alzheimer's, I mean, it is a disease process, so it will continue to progress. But there's thought that by volunteering, you're going to actually help maybe slow the process just a little bit, which is a good thing because obviously the longer that you're able to function on your own and be able to interact is key. And so that's why they encourage people who are obviously, as they start to age, start volunteering because it allows for that connection. And this is particularly true if, once you retire, because when we are working, we do have some form of social connection, typically with our coworkers. And then when we retire, that usually goes away. And for a lot of people, this is a big adjustment. And especially, I mean, we spend most of our adult life working. And prior to that, we were in school. And so we always had this form of some level of connection. And then when we get to be, to the point of retiring, that usually all of a sudden just goes away. And some people, if you don't have activities to essentially replace your job with, and in this case, volunteering is a great way to do that, is then that increases where you're isolated, which when we're isolated, that's when things start to deteriorate, physically and mentally, just because we're not doing as much as we were before. And a great thing about volunteering is when, even though a lot of people, one of the main concerns is as far as time. I don't have time to volunteer. I'm too busy to do that. I've got too much to do. And what studies show actually is when you volunteer, you feel like you have more time. And part of that is because we're not wasting our time doing things, that aren't, if you will, helpful, beneficial to not only us, but to others. And so this is where when you're spending time helping other people, this shows that, instead of, hate to pick on social media because I do use it, but instead of like just sitting there scrolling on your phone or, you know, just watching YouTube videos endlessly, whatever it is that would be the case, then by helping others, you feel like you actually have more productive time. You feel like you're making a difference. Therefore, you have this concept of you actually have more time. So that's, a side benefit of it. We all have the same amount of time. It's just our perception of it as far as busyness and such. And the great thing here is, once again, I mentioned about the empathy part, but we're also have the opportunity when volunteering to expand our perspective on many different areas of life. And this can be great because you can learn new things, experience new things, interact with new people who you might not have ever interacted with before or even considered interacting with. And it can create all these different connections that is so vital and gives you food for thought. If you choose to volunteer in something and you interact with somebody who otherwise you never would have interacted with in your entire life, it gives you a perspective of how that person's life is, and obviously you're helping them in some way, but it allows you to put your own life in better perspective. And sometimes when we're helping others who are really struggling with something, it helps us be more thankful for what we have that we didn't even realize that we had. So I think that's something that is so key, is having that interaction. The other big thing is obviously the sense of satisfaction, the sense of purpose you get from helping others. That is so key. And so we obviously touched upon the socialization aspect, which is a big element of it. It helps us develop emotional stability, which is for people who have depression or PTSD, low self-esteem. When they volunteer, it actually helps them process through that. Obviously, so in some cases, you're definitely going to need therapy in addition to that, depending on how severe any of these conditions are. But when you're volunteering, it gives you a sense of connectedness that's not there otherwise. And the other big thing is, as you're volunteering, you're helping your community. And this is so important because that's something that we're slowly losing as we become more isolated, more self-focused on our internal thoughts and all of that. And this is why it's so key, is because think of if you organized a park cleanup. And you go to your local neighborhood park, and if it's a mess, you get a bunch of people volunteer, you pick up the garbage, make it safe. Now there's a spot for kids to go play and interact, and their parents can go and know that it's a safe spot for them to go. And so this is something that I think is so important, is be helping foster that sense of community that I think we're slowly losing in a way in as far as a physical environment. And I think that's something that as we continue down a future path here is going to be key in helping us remain connected to one another or get reconnected with each other. And so those are the two big elements as far as obviously physical and mental health. And those are the ones that I think many people don't realize all the positive benefits that the person who's the volunteer actually gets from the experience, not just the person who is being helped by the volunteer. And then I'm going to focus just briefly on the ideas of the things most people associate with volunteering. One of them, obviously, you can bolster your resume. A lot of places of employment look at if you put volunteering on there because it can communicate a lot of different things. One, it shows that you're willing to spend your time doing something that is not monetarily compensated. That means you're willing to put in effort, you're willing to do certain things that most likely you will have in your job as well. As far as, just be careful because it depends on where you volunteer. Just remember that obviously if it's political related, religious related, anything else that's in there, it's on there. And obviously no employer should be discriminating against you for where you volunteer or anything like that. Just keep in mind, things do happen. But the big thing is that it helps you build awareness and social skills and certain other skills that many places of employment view favorably because of the fact that it's um, can be translated to a job. So this can be things like collaborative skills, resourcefulness, and initiative. When you're volunteering to solve a problem. And so how you solve that problem, those skills that you learn how to be able to do that translate over into what you need to, could use for a job. And that's something that's important. Obviously, you can gain, if you're volunteering in something that's similar to your job market, you can gain skills in that way as well. And similarly, if you're volunteering in something that's similar to your job market, then you'll be able to know what matters to that market sometimes quicker than if you weren't volunteering. Because obviously, people who are volunteering, they're trying to fix this problem, and those are often highlighted sooner rather than if you were trying to just solve it, some point down the line when the problem actually becomes a huge problem, and that's typically when most corporations are looking at it. And when you're volunteering, you gain a network of people that you can connect to. And typically, volunteers like to help other volunteers. So when you are volunteering, you're going to meet people, and at some point down the road, I mean, this obviously is a benefit of volunteering. It shouldn't be the reason you're volunteering, but you get to meet other individuals who might help you with something, or obviously you can help them. And that's something that's also really, really important. And companies are starting to realize the value of people being volunteers. So they're actually supporting um, local and national programs by giving financial assistance to programs for volunteers. They encourage their employees to volunteer either at the locations or in some format because they view the, I guess, well-rounded developedness that volunteering creates. And the best thing about volunteering is it can quite literally be anything. And the flexibility of it. Most organizations that need volunteers need people at all different hours, whether it's days, nights, weekends, whatever it is. So there's going to be something that should be able to fit into your schedule. The big thing is you have to be willing to look. So you're probably wondering at this point, well, how do you get started, right? Well, you can put your intentions on Facebook. If you have LinkedIn, put it on LinkedIn. And this will help you get connected to, different opportunities that are available. Um, Another one is Catch a Fire or a volunteer match. These can give you, local because you can just put in where you are. Or movingworlds.com is like an international based one. Um, so all of these different things, I mean, your local library would probably have information. I know most of us don't think about the library anymore. I mean, how many people actually go? To me, I love to read. I love the smell of books. I'm weird. I actually have candles that are book scented, but the library's great because they're going to have a list of different things. You could check your newspaper, which obviously is online now, so there's ways to check that. Um, but the big thing to remember is you just got to get out there and do it. And by doing that, you're going to see these benefits that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And that's something that I think is so important, is that when we're volunteering, we start to see a subtle shift in ourselves, in our lives. We're going to feel more connected to others. Um, we're going to feel less stressed. We're going to be less absorbed in what we view as our struggles. I mean, sometimes once we were volunteering and have a different perspective, what we thought was hard is now no longer as challenging as we once perceived it. And you're going to share your experiences with others, and you're going to want to help even more. And I think this is something that's so important, is to have that opportunity to get out there, connect to others. And obviously, you're going to help them, but also the benefit it provides for you. And I think that's is such a key element that many people don't realize is there. So this is what my challenge for you guys for this week is to get out there, find an opportunity, and go volunteer. Even if it's once a week for an hour. Find something to do that is, just spending time helping somebody else, helping animals if you're going to volunteer at an animal shelter, if your cause is the environment, find something related to that, whatever it is. I want you to get out there, volunteer, drop it in the comments, tell me, hey, today I went and volunteered an hour at the animal shelter. If you have questions or anything else you want to share, please either put it in the comments, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you guys. But I want to challenge you to get out there and make a difference today. Thank you guys for joining me this week. And I will see you next week. Have a good rest of the week now and a great weekend. And until next time, you guys stay healthy.